So by now you may have seen this 9-minute piece by Vice on Jordan Peterson. Now I've seen worse pieces by Vice, but this also has the usual problems of reducing a much longer interview, 2 hours according to what Peterson said at an event after this piece came out, to something much less than that. There's actually a longer 17-minute version out there which gives a little more context, and I'll link to that below. But by now many people will have seen Peterson saying things like, should makeup be allowed in the workplace? Should high heels be allowed in the workplace? And if so, why? Is it not sexually provocative? And on the back of these statements, some people have concluded that Peterson wants to ban makeup or high heels in the workplace, which is not what he's saying at all. And no, I'm not going to play the audio because Vice has copyrighted it. And Vice also goes out of their way to portray Peterson's followers as kooks or lost souls, choosing to play questions from one of Peterson's live shows. One question about revenge-taking Jews, and another about UFOs. And no doubt there are some weirdos that follow Peterson, but why choose those two examples of Peterson's followers out of literally hundreds, perhaps thousands of questions he's been asked on stage in the past year or so? Well, because it fits the narrative that Vice wants to paint. Now, more recently, a video has surfaced of Peterson speaking at an event at the University of British Columbia. This segment is about 15 minutes long, but I'm just going to play the relevant parts.
I started noticing this about 25 years ago when, the news would show a politician talking, but the newscaster would be saying what the person said. It's like, well, why have the politician there at all? You might as well just have the newscaster. And that's when I stopped watching television news. And that was really like about 25 years ago. The Vice interview was that sort of taken to its extreme. It was like he had an idea of what the situation was, and he wasn't as aggressive about it as Kathy Newman, but it was the same sort of thing. It was like he was going to catch me out one way or another. And that happened for about 2 hours, and he had kind of a supercilious attitude, which is not uncommon among, let's say, New York journalists. And we talked for about 2 hours, and I said something that was provocative, I would say. I said, well, we don't know what the rules governing men and women's behavior, sexual behavior in the workplace should be. I said, well, let's take makeup and high heels, for example. So maybe they shouldn't be allowed. I didn't say they shouldn't be allowed. I said, maybe they shouldn't be allowed. That's actually what you do when you try to think about something. People don't like to think about things. I have really noticed this in my clinical practice. So, let's say I'm dealing with someone, and I might say, well, let's think of some options for your future. And they're really nervous, right away. It's like, no, I don't want to do that. It's like, well, relax. We can talk about a bunch of things, and that doesn't mean they have to happen. Because that's what thinking is like. It's like you can talk about things, and they don't have to happen. But it's not easy for people to make that leap, because they get all nervous. They say, well, I don't want to talk about that. It's like, relax. We'll make a rule. We're going to talk about 10 things today that might happen, and none of them are going to happen. Okay? And then people can finally have a bit of courage and maybe think. And what you do when you think is you throw out an idea, and then you think about it. And I thought, well, it's been common practice. Men wear uniforms at work. They wear suits. A suit's a derivation of a military uniform. Why do men wear suits? So they're all the same. Why should they be all the same? So that unnecessary individual variability doesn't interfere with the functionality of the business. Now, you can argue about that. You might say, well, you don't want to make everyone wear the same damn suit because you get rid of all the creativity. Fair enough, that's a reasonable argument, but that's why the uniform, the suit, evolved. And so if you wear a suit and I wear a suit and we go to a business meeting, then the first thing we can figure out is, well, you're at least playing the same game I am enough so that you're wearing a suit. And it's like, that's not everything, but it's not nothing, right? And so, and when the Maoists made their advances in China, men and women wore the same uniform. Why? Well, it was for the same reason. It was to eliminate unnecessary individual variability. Well, if you don't want sexual behavior at work, first of all, you've got to decide that. Do you not want sexual behavior at work? Because the answer to that might not be, we don't want sexual behavior at work. You want to work in an environment where romantic entanglements are essentially illegal. That's what NBC has done. right? That's their new policy. Is like if you work at NBC and you know of coworkers who are having a romantic engagement with another coworker, you're obligated to report them to HR. It's like, well, you might say no affairs at work. It's like, okay, you want to put an informer culture in place to impose that, do you? Well, maybe you do, but maybe you should think about it, because the cure might be worse than the disease. It's like, well, like the evolutionary psychology and biology of makeup and high heels is crystal clear. I mean, people disputed that. It's like, well, read the goddamn literature, morons. I mean, I get so sick of this. It's like, these aren't opinions that I'm just trotting out. You know, why do women wear rouge? It's to make the cheeks look like fruit. That's why. We're derived from fruit-eating primates. We have color vision. It's trichromatic. We pick out fruit. It's ripeness. That's what lipstick does. It also indicates a sexual flush. And if you don't like that, well, tough luck for you. That's what it is. Now, I'm not saying, and it indicates youth as well, a youthful glow, but that's also associated with sexual attractiveness, because that's one of the prime determinants of sexual attractiveness for women among men. So, now I'm not saying that shouldn't happen at work. And then high heels. Okay, why do you wear high heels? Well, it's because it tilts your hips so that you're... Is that acceptable at work? Well, of course. It's like, no, not of course. Not of course. Perhaps. But we can't have a serious discussion about what's acceptable at work and what isn't, because we're too damn immature to have the discussion. We can't even throw things out on the table like that. It's like, I don't know what the rules should be. At my workplace, at the university, I've been warned innumerable times not to have a discussion with a student, male or female, but it's the females that are of concern in this particular rule, with the door shut. And that's not like 6 months ago. That's not like 3 months ago. That's like advice from the last 15 years. Now, I don't listen to that because I think, sorry, I'm not living that way. But these things are tense. They're tense. And we won't talk about them intelligently and maturely. You know, I've also been accused 3 times in my career of sexual impropriety. Baseless accusations. And the last one really tangled me up for a whole year. It's not entertaining. So there's plenty to be sorted out, but like I said already, we live in the delusion of a 13-year-old adolescent girl. And so as long as we maintain that level of sophistication, we're not going to have a real conversation about what rules should govern men and women in the workplace. So you can't even open the damn discussion without being jumped on by, a ray of like rabid harpies. So that in the Vice interview, it's no bloody wonder the media is dying. They're doing everything they possibly can to cut their throats and bleed out as fast as they possibly can. I read a bunch of the comments on the Vice interview, and some of them were irritated at me about the makeup and high heel thing. It's like, well, whatever. I knew perfectly well what I said. I thought, oh yeah, I'll say this, and it's the only goddamn thing. It shows how predictable it was. But most of the comments that I've read so far have been, look, Vice guys, we know what you're up to, and we're pretty much sick of it. There are many people with whom I've sat down and had discussions where things were played straight, and I would say it's actually the majority of them. But there's a pretty pernicious minority that does what Vice did. It's like, there's no excuse for that. There's no excuse for it. It's like, you've got no principles. Let's make this salacious. It's like, these things are important, you morons. It's like, get it together. Don't muck about like that. What the hell do you think you're doing? Well, we need the clicks. It's like, up yours. It's like, seriously, it's so pathetic. It's so pathetic. You can't do it on content, so you'll do it on manipulation. There's a motif for your life. I can't do it on content, so I'll do it on manipulation. The motto of Vice.
The issue here is not that makeup or high heels are a problem per se, but as Peterson says, that we can't have an honest adult conversation about what constitutes appropriate interactions between men and women in the workplace. The simpleton from Vice keeps trying to reduce it to not grabbing someone inappropriately, which everybody already understands, but it's obviously more nuanced than that. There's absolutely no valid reason for grabbing someone just because of what they're wearing. But what if a woman is wearing a low-cut top showing ample cleavage? Are you, as a man, allowed to even glance? For how long? Is 2 seconds okay? Or is that now sexual harassment? That's what's meant by not knowing what the rules are. But given the current hysteria, it's unlikely we're going to get an adult conversation on this issue anytime soon. I'll see you next time.